Okay.
Looks like we've just gone live, Tash. I'm going to give it sort of 30 seconds to give people time to come in before we really and truly kick off. I just want to say you do look stunning today.
Oh, thank you.
You really look stunning.
Thank you. And
Oh,
I'm all in pink.
you are, aren't you? And here am I, all in white. But oh, no, my red glasses. Red glasses. Okay, let me kick off. Let me first of all say to everybody who's joining, first of all, thank you all so much for coming on this call. This is going to be a bit different from me because rather than a client, it is the lovely Tash, who I will tell you a little bit about, but I'm going to get her to share her journey. Tash phoned me yesterday, I have to say, and said, Pen, what questions are you going to ask me? I said, I don't know, Tash. Should we wing it? So, normal style, that's what we're going to do. But let me just tell you, I have known Tash for a long time. Just to say that when I first started delivering this program, which is when I was 50, which is now, God, 31 years ago, I can remember us climbing all over the floor, printing out every single workbook, putting them all together, and it was all over the floor. So that's how long we've been working together. So Tash has been a part of my life for so long, as almost as long as I can remember. But she's been such an important part of my life, starting as a somewhat different employee, then graduating into friendship, graduating into support, graduating into one thing after the other. So Tash, I think what would be really lovely is if we kick off by you saying, where did our journey start together and how it is that you then got into leadership and began to acquire the passion that you have for it now.
Well, as you rightly said, it was a long time ago. I'm not sure I was even a teenager the first time I met you. And my sister was working for you at the time, so which is how we met. And I would occasionally sort of be at your house, possibly not even invited by you. And you were this sort of formidable whirlwind of energy, as you still are. And I was probably not as frightened as I might have been if my mother also wasn't a very formidable lady. So I think there was sort of some remnants of that. And so, I had this real impression of you of being this dynamo. And I knew you were in business of some sort, but I didn't really understand it. I was really young. And then we, because I was good friends with your daughter, obviously I saw you a lot socially, but then when I was 17 and I'd been working as a nanny in London for a year, I remember vividly, we were in Northamptonshire, we were in your lovely house in Northamptonshire, and you asked me what was my next step. And what did I want to do with my life, as you all want to do with a 17-year-old who thought, oh my God, how do I answer this? And I said, I want a career, but I really had no idea what I was looking for. And as it happened, you had an office junior position and you offered it to me. And so, it's very impulsive, probably on your part, I don't know, but certainly on mine, was to take that role. And just from day one of working with you, it was so different to what I suppose I expected a work environment to be like. It was, you would throw me in at the deep end. We would be on client visits somewhere amazing. I seem to remember somewhere like, it might have been the Ritz, but certainly somewhere really nice and swanky in London. You were meeting a client and you, I think, rushed out to take a call. Or some reason you rushed out of the room and said, oh, Tash, I'll leave you to chat. I remember sitting with this, I'm sure he was the CEO of something, some huge organization, thinking, what do I say? But I'm so grateful for that, because you absolutely pushed me out of my comfort zone and continue to do so. But you do it in such a way, it almost seems, like a gift. And actually it has been. So in terms of leadership, I saw something very different in you. You, for me anyway, were the first real female role model of somebody who was sort of, I guess, what I now would describe as being a leader. And I had various roles within your organization. As your organization changed through, anybody who's been on the program will know your life story, and that shift for you going from management consultancy to leadership. And I was there, you know, in and out of all of that journey, I suppose. And then because I'd got an operational role within the business, you suggested I might do what we now call CTP, effectively train the trainer, to become a trainer, but only for the purposes of understanding it, never for the purpose of delivering it. Now, that wasn't quite true. Whether that was actually in your mind at the time, I don't know. But whatever the stars aligned, as they say. And I found myself at first being very interested and curious about the material. I saw you living it, but I didn't know kind of the mechanics of it, if you like, what pulled all this material together. And having become trained to be a trainer, it changed my life. There's absolutely no two ways about it. My life would not have been the way it has been if I had not had you in it. And I will be forever grateful for that. And doing the program, the PLP itself, that was fundamental for me. It really changed things for me. Doing CTP, or train the trainer as it was, absolutely changed things for me, or changed me. I chose to change as a result of those experiences, and my life is different and better as a result. I'm a better parent. I'm a better wife to my husband. I'm a better friend. I feel like it's unlocked potential in me I certainly didn't see in myself.
Tasha, it's so fascinating to hear you talking about the past and actually remembering what it was like. And when you think about it, in many ways, you and I are very similar. I'd never worked in a business. I don't have any qualifications. And it was just this passion and this drive I have. And you'd never worked in a business, you know, and you didn't have any of that background. And yet we're now, in some ways, almost the mainstays, because we were in it from the very, very beginning. I think the only other person who started on the journey about the same time as you was Christine.
Yeah.
And it's been so interesting to see how we've all grown in different ways. Yeah, I remember in the beginning, I think probably when I suggested you doing Train the Trainer. God, I don't know if you can remember this, because when we did it, it was hilarious because I had 9 Jack Russells at the time, and quite often we'd be doing training, big clients, and the dogs would be in the room at the same time. And I don't know if you remember, Jody always used to decide at a certain point that it was tea time, and he'd come and sit in front of me when I was training and go up on his bum and then
like this.
I mean, when you think how we started, it really was very amazing. And I think you were pretty nervous about starting doing, as we called it then, the masterclass.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious. You did the 3-day, and that had an impact on you.
Yeah.
How different was it, and how much further did it take you when you then did the masterclass? Because it wasn't as professional as it is today. It was me trying to make it up, teaching people as I went along.
Yeah, and the dreaded black and red notes, as we used to call them, but we'll gloss over that. It was a world apart from the PLP. The PLP is fantastic. You know, I love it. We've all seen and felt the impact in all of the years it's been. We've experienced it. So that's without question fantastic in its own right. What we now call the CTP, the Certified Trainer Program, is a world away in terms of your level of understanding and depth of and of messages and linkages. And it's, for me, the CTP is a standalone fast track leadership development program in a different way to the PLP. The PLP is the cracking of the open of the door, and you're getting a glimpse at lots of things, and you go away and apply it, and you see a difference, and you kind of buy in, if you like. You know it makes sense, and you're seeing the benefit. The leadership, the CTP, is a leadership program well beyond that. You can't just intellectually know it without on CTP, it can't just come from your head. And this is something you often say, it shifts things. It's not just about it. Does this make sense? Do I understand it? It's actually, is this who I want to be? Is this the person I want to be? Am I being the best version of me I can be? And it gives you a much, much deeper insight that for me is just incredible.
It's interesting, and I'd be curious to know, because at the moment the only people who go through the CTP are people who want to become trainers. I have to say that I think that for senior people in an organization, especially on the top team, you need at least one or two people who've been through the CTP. And nothing to do with delivering a program. I'm always feel very strongly, and I think you do too, that whether they're ever going to deliver programs again, they need to deliver the first one, which is the pilot, because that's the only thing that gives you an insight as to whether the learning has truly landed and gone from head to heart. Yeah. But other than that, to be able to have people who've been through it, I'd be interested to know, how important do you think it is to have some people going through it, not necessarily to deliver, but to become, I don't know what you call them really. It's the mentors, but it's also the coaches, the keepers of the culture, everything like that within an organization.
Yeah. If I had a huge organization and I was on the leadership team of that organization, I can't think of anything better we could do as a team than to go through CTP, because it touches all of those parts of those roles and enables you to lead in an entirely different way, which, like you say, from a cultural point of view, would absolutely feed into the organization from the top down. But I would also, and of course, this is easy for me to say because I've seen it and I have felt it, but this would be, I think, a tough sell. You'll get pushback from people at that level, rightly saying, do I have the time? How will I measure the impact of investing 10 days in this? Because that's what it is. It's 2 lots of 5 days is how we generally do it. My response would be, can you afford not to? If you really want embedded, sustainable change in your organization and you don't want to keep repeating cycles of parachuting people in to fix something, but actually you want to have that capability in-house, you can't afford not to do it. That would be the business case. But actually, on top of that, and I've absolutely seen this, and we've had plenty of CEOs, the likes of Sophie and people at that C-suite level that have been through it and would advocate what we've just talked about. But I've also seen people at not senior level in an organization, somebody believing in them and sponsoring them to do CTP, and their trajectory in terms of their career and capability within the organization hugely being fast-tracked by doing CTP. So it's, if you, yes, it's a leadership development program as far as I'm concerned, but that's at every level.
It's interesting. If you look, I mean, Jojo is an amazing example, and she's the CEO of one of the divisions in Kraft Heinz, and she went through the masterclass CTP. I still keep calling it the masterclass. That's what it is to me, a masterclass. But she went through it with 3 of her directors. All 3 of them have now been promoted.
Yeah, we've got so many examples of that with our clients.
Yeah, and I think it's so special. And there's a couple of people. I mean, Paul Stobart, the way he lives and breathes and walks the talk all the time is key. I think for me, I always remember on one of the early conversations that I did, I can't remember how long ago, but one I did with Chris Weston, and he said something I thought, God, if this doesn't scare the shit out of people, I don't know what does. I remember him saying, and I can't remember his exact words, but he said, if you're going to go down this route and you're going to be a leader, you have to be at every minute of every day. You cannot slip. If you do one thing that goes against that leadership behavior, people will notice it, and that will do more damage than anything. You have to do it every minute of every day. And it is scary. You and I have been teaching it for years. I don't know how often you screw up, but I still screw up.
Well, and plenty. The difference is, and I think this is somewhat about sort of experience, life experience, age, maturity, all of those things. But the difference is now I'm not too proud to say I got that wrong.
Yeah.
And I agree with the principle of what Chris says, and it's absolutely true. We cast a long shadow the more senior or influential we are in our organizations. We absolutely do. That's obvious. So that ripple out of the impact of your behaviors and the things that you say goes beyond what you might immediately realize. So there's absolute power in that, if you like, in that level of influence. But if and when, it's really when you get it wrong, how powerful is it to hear somebody that you respect or is in a very senior position in your own organization saying, I messed up, I got that wrong, and I'm sorry. And I think that's a skill and a characteristic that is underutilized for many of us, myself included. I actually find it easier to say it at work than I might do at home. And I'm sure if my husband's listening, he's probably agreeing with that.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I agree with you. It's very powerful to be able to say I screwed up and I got that wrong. And one of the things that to have a high performing team, more than anything else, what you really need in that team is trust. And if you begin to screw up the behaviors and not say, hang on a minute, I got that wrong, you damage the trust. And without trust, I don't believe that you can ever really build a team. And the thing that I find so interesting, and you and I have been into so many different companies where they haven't, they're bringing this in for the first time. And when we do the very first bit, which we, call drop the mask, you begin to show who you really are. It is terrifying to me how people don't know each other. And then you think the most important thing in a team is trust. But if people don't really know each other, how the bloody hell do you build trust?
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it.
Yeah. Well, and the truth is you can't make somebody trust you.
Oh.
So you put yourself out there and you show a bit of vulnerability or a willingness to come out of your own comfort zone. And in doing that, it seems to engender this environment where other people feel it's okay to do the same. And through that shared experience and that shared, showing vulnerability, I believe that helps trust grow quicker. I think I use fast tracking a lot as a reference, but I actually do think it fast tracks trust somewhat. It's such a powerful environment that's created because people are prepared to let themselves be vulnerable.
Yeah, it is. And, there's some people, and you and I know some people who've worked with us again and again, every company they go into. And when you look back and see how they were when they started working with us 20 years ago, and you see how difficult they found it to be that open and vulnerable, and you see the way they are now, you think, oh my God, and they are incredible leaders, absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Now, Tasha, I am going to ask you because we haven't had anybody that I've had a conversation with who's been able to really give anybody any insight into what is the sort of journey they go through when they do the certified training program. Because having said earlier, saying that would it be interesting to do it whether you want to become a trainer or not, and I still think you need to go through the full experience. There's no good doing an abbreviated version of it. Doesn't work. Then it would be interesting, I think, for people to hear a little bit about the journey and what you observe about how people experience that journey. And before I ask you to do that, I would like to just to say to anybody and everybody who's listening, or people who watch it afterwards, who can email us, if you've got any questions for Tash or me on the way through, or anything that you want us to specifically share with you, please do put a message up, and we will endeavour to answer it. So please do just leap in if you want to. So Tash, if you could do that, give people a little insight into what is the journey that you observe as people go through what do you think is their experience and how do they handle it? It's not an easy one, I know, to answer, but have a crack at it, can you?
Yeah, sure. I would say when people, so we have a briefing call roughly about 6 weeks before the first week of CTP. It's like I said, it's 10 days. We do 2 blocks of 5 days with a gap in between to obviously give people time to prepare. So the briefing call is that part of that preparation bit of saying, right, this is what the format is when you turn up on day one. I give them a clear overview of what to expect. They get all their materials, they get access to online portal, and is a very clear directive about preparation is absolutely key. And preparation means be able to turn up and deliver as if you're going to be delivering to a real group, and you'll be going to get, it's a feedback frenzy is how I tend to describe it. You can see on the briefing call, which is we do on in the virtual space, you can see the fear in people's eyes slightly, where they thought, I've been on the PLP and I've loved it and I'd really like to deliver it, but this sounds like something very scary and different. So they, I think there's a bit of a shock. And then as soon as they and I and any other trainer who's delivering it has established that first contact, we're available from that moment on. So if there's, I always say, reach out if you've got any questions. Very rarely does anybody reach out, which is great. I'm not making a judgment about that. And then they show up on day one. And the room's set up boardroom style, which is very different to the PLP. As you know, that's very much more of a lounge, casual, informal. But this is a teaching environment, so it is different. And I spend, the first morning really settling people in. I open to any questions, setting the format, doing introductions. But the absolute fear in people's faces on that first morning, I'm smiling as if I'm enjoying that, but it's just an observation. I would say generally everybody is a little bit, oh, this is very real. We've had the call. I know what to expect. I've done some prep, but here I am now. And I know any minute now she's going to ask me to get up and deliver in front of, 5 other people and get feedback from a couple of them and Tash. So this very quickly, you just got to do it. The longer you wait to do that first delivery, I think is just sort of prolonging that agony. Because actually, once they've done their first one, you see some of that dropping and they're getting the feedback. They're also providing feedback to each other. So there's this sort of 360 environment that's very unique, where you're delivering as if you're a trainer of the program and responding as if we're your delegate. So you've got that part of your brain is very active. When you're not delivering, you're either acting as a delegate or as a observer to provide feedback, and you're also hearing feedback being provided on something that you've just observed. So there's all these different factors to taking into account. So it's sort of they're activating so many different parts of their brain, and it's exhausting. But over the days, you see their growth and their self-belief and their absolute determination to deliver something really fantastic.
Okay, Tash, I'm just going to interrupt you because you've had a question before you move on. And I think it's important if you can answer it now from Gregory. Tash, deliver what? Course material or personal insight?
Great question. Course material. So you're learning to deliver the program. It's broken down into lesson plans. You would never know that as you do that, the PLP, you would never realize that, but it is, it is a structured program. So you're working and delivering lesson plans. There are 24 in total. In week 1, we do 10 of them, which is primarily day one. So they are, as a delegate of CTP, you'll deliver pretty much every single one in front of the whole group of the first days of the first 10. And you'll be getting feedback and seeing feedback.
Let me just, sorry to keep coming in, Tash, but I'm trying to keep it where I can ask questions at the relevant bit. So when they have to prepare before they come on the program, what is the bit? I don't want somebody hearing they've got to deliver all of day one. What do you actually expect them to deliver or have learned that they can do at the very first day when they come?
Yeah, my suggestion to people when we do the briefing is that if they can get the first 5 lesson plans pretty well prepared, as in they've got lesson plans that will tell them everything that they need to do. They've got objectives that they know they need to meet. It's all very, very clear. But their handwritten notes are to sort of obviously elevate that. We want them to bring in their own examples as well. So they've got enough of notes, and people do all sorts of things. They have index cards with their notes on. They have their own printed lesson plans. People use their iPads, whatever format. And they'll be on day 1, we'll be doing the first 2 lesson plans. So pretty much every day we'll do at least 2 lesson plans, which sounds like not a lot maybe in a whole day, but it is, because you're getting into that depth so that you really do understand it. So yes, you're going to deliver that lesson plan, and you're going to see others deliver it. So you're getting that absorption through the repetition and hearing the feedback from the whole group, and discussing it and debriefing it. So hence why I say really fast tracks your understanding, because you're going to such a deep level on it.
How important do you think everybody giving feedback on everybody else is?
It's vital, because I said it, I alluded to this, you know, it activates a different part of your brain. In fact, so let's say person 1 gets up and delivers lesson plan 1. It won't be all 5 other delegates giving them feedback. That would be too much. So what I'll do is I'll say, right, the person to your right and the person to your left, you 2 are going to give feedback afterwards. So they know they're going to be giving feedback, as well as then I'll top and tail it. So when they've given theirs, I'll provide mine. That activates a different part of their brain. They're listening at a different level, because they know they've got a job to do in terms of picking up, have they hit the objectives, what worked particularly well, you know, what I would have wanted more of. And they're giving, you know, that sort of feedback. And then I'll give my feedback. But I'm sat there hearing their feedback, getting an understanding of what they've heard and how well they understand the material based on that. So it's, you know, like I say, it's a very dynamic, intense environment, but it's an incredible learning environment.
And it's also, I think, interesting, Tash, because it's one of the things, sometimes I wonder if one of the things we maybe don't do enough of in organizations is teaching people how to give feedback, because it's something that people find so incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
You know, it's very easy to say to somebody, you did a good job. That was great. But giving it so that it's personal, so that it means something about what the individual's doing, not just you did a good job, thank you very much, or whatever. That takes a skill. And if it's not something you're used to in the beginning, you can feel really uncomfortable. But also people find it very difficult to know how to give feedback over something that hasn't gone as well. And one of the things, and I'm curious as to how you cover this in the CTP. One of the things that I find interesting is thinking about giving feedback. Nobody likes to hear something negative. You know, you didn't do this very well, or that didn't work so well. We don't like it. And a lot of our temptation is to become defensive about it. Oh, well, the reason I did it is because. And I still remember it was working with one client, and they were very senior. And what had happened was one of the other areas, I think it was head of legal, had sent out an email to everybody in her division about something, and she'd known nothing about it. So it came from her colleague, and she was livid because it impacted her. She was absolutely furious, and she went in all guns blazing. Do you know what you did here, etc.? And I had to say to her, I said, look, I understand. You had every justification to be not very happy about that. However, think about how you could have handled it differently. Supposing, rather than going in all guns blazing, saying you did, supposing you'd gone in and said, if you knew that that email you've just sent out has caused a lot of problems for me and put me in a very vulnerable position, how would you feel about that? So you're still, if you like, giving the feedback, but not in a way says it's got it's wrong. You're asking the person to think about how they feel about the impact they may have had. And I think that is something that I'm not talking about people who go through the CTP, because I'm darn sure that you cover it frequently in the CTP and you actually do it, a lot of it in that way. But people who've only done the 3-day program, I'm not certain that they then have enough depth of understanding to be able to say, how can we help them give feedback afterwards? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think feedback as a phrase strikes fear in people.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we want people in our organizations to be able to freely provide on feedback in the moment without having to make a huge song and dance, and there's a place for that, you know, separate to this, but where it's organic and it's conversational and it's non-threatening and there's no need to be defensive about it. In fact, we'd welcome it. If we want that to happen, then that takes effort and that takes a lot of practice. And it takes a developing skill. I think part of the fear is I don't feel skilled in doing it. You know, where's my qualification for this?
Yeah.
And so I think you've got multiple things happening, because I think there's skill in providing it, there's skill in receiving it, and there's skill in kind of the dance that you're having with somebody where you don't know what they're feeling for sure. So you've kind of got that, all this sort of interpersonal stuff happening in the moment. So I think one of the things that I find useful is to say nobody is I don't know of anybody who's perfect at feedback. There'll be times where we misfire a bit, and it's, again, we come back to that sorry thing. You know, maybe I was a bit too tough there. Maybe I could have done this. So that self-reflection is important too. But if we are less fearful of it and we just do it and we get feedback on providing it, then you're much more likely to generate that sort of environment. I always start with the end in mind. What's the purpose of the feedback? What's the benefit for them? So what am I, starting with the end in mind, why am I providing this feedback? And if you start with that, I think it might be helpful if I share a little bit about what I heard you say in that meeting. You know, if you start with that, then what I think that does is it establishes for both of you a purpose of this conversation.
Yeah.
And of course you can ask the other person too, but it starts with it from a positive. There's an interesting observation I make, and I share this often with people on CTP. When we do CTP, one of the first things I do when you've delivered your own session, when you've delivered lesson plan 1, is before anybody gives you any feedback, I'll ask you what went well. And you can see people really confused, because you can imagine you've just delivered something, you've been practicing this and preparing for it. What do you think is the first thing that people think of when they've actually finished? Everything they did wrong. You know, we've all been there. We completely understand it. And then somebody's saying to you, what went well? And you think, nothing. Hang on a minute. I'm still processing this that I missed and that I should have said. So, but and there's obviously I'm not doing it just to be mean. There's a purpose for it, but it's very obvious how quickly our brain goes to the things that we didn't get right. Now, the chances are that 97% of it was great.
Yeah.
And we're there focusing on 3% in our own heads. So anybody that comes in and immediately reinforces that 3%, it suddenly isn't 3%, it magnifies it.
Yeah.
And you lose perspective on actually the big picture, you know, the sort of higher level. So really forcing yourself to come out and say what went well is a technique to recognize where our brain automatically goes, and to catch that automation, to say, do it differently. It is not to say that there's not something to be learned to do differently next time. That is not what we're doing here. But we're saying, let's get perspective on this. And not only that, you're going to get perspective of a few different people. So it's not just one directional. The other thing that I really notice on CTP is when you provide positive feedback to people that would probably describe it as being positive. You know, you landed that point really well. The way you explained the integral performance model was fantastic. The examples were great. You see the person that you're providing the feedback to sort of nodding their head and, you know, smile on their face. Thank you very much. But they're not writing anything down. And then when I say, there were a few things that I felt you could have spent more time on. So, for example, when you explained the responsibility exercise, it would have been helpful to have had more context for that. They're writing that down. They're pleased as punch. You've given them something really meaningful that they could do something with. Isn't it interesting? Where are they putting the value? They're putting the value on the stuff that they would describe in the negative column. They're not placing the value on the positive. So they've heard it, but are they really letting that land? Because it's not, if we're not doing that when we're receiving feedback, we're probably not being as good as we could be on providing that balanced feedback.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Do you know, I'd never even noticed that or thought about that they write down, they don't write down what are the positive bits, but they do the other bits.
Yeah.
How pushy are you about telling people that they need to keep doing their gratitude books?
Oh, I mean, you'd have to ask some of the people watching how push I am generally. But whether it's, to me, if I'm being honest, so I've got a gratitude, I've got a gratitude journal. In fact, a lovely lady who's just been through CTP with me has bought me a all singing, all dancing one as well. So I've got a new one next to my bed. And I would say over the last probably 5 years, I don't do it as religiously every night as I used to. But gratitude in terms of just noticing, because I know one of the things that you do when you used to deliver the PLP, you used to scare people to death because you'd say 50 things a day that you're grateful for. And I always remember anybody who'd ever been on your program would say to me, she asked me to do 50. There's going to be so much repetition. And, they were so sort of caught up in it. I think you can find far more than that. If literally what you're doing as you go through your day is just noticing anything and everything that you possibly can that you could be grateful for, and that gives you an entirely different perspective. It's not a chore anymore of something you've got to sit and write down. And if you want to, that's fab. And I take loads of photos of things. I'll pull over into a lay-by and take a photo if there's a rainbow or a great shot or a great piece of scenery or whatever it is, just to capture it. So however you do it, and I do a multitude of different things, but noticing everything that you possibly can, there is far more than 50, and it's no longer a chore, it's a joy, because it's sort of affirming just how much we have to be grateful for.
Tash, it's music to hear this, because I think you're so right. I don't think many people take the time to really do that. And of course, the most difficult time to do it is when you're going through some sort of shit.
Yeah.
And yet it's so easy to end up going down the drain hole, because the more you look for shit, guess what? The more you find it. My favorite expression, be careful what you look for, because you might just find it.
Yeah.
If you look for the negative, you're going to find it. If you look for the positive, you'll find it. Yeah. But it is a case of almost training your mind into, how can I continue looking for the good things? And I don't think it's what people do naturally. And yet, oh my God, when you do, then you influence the way your days are going to turn out, because that's what you're looking for. So you do influence them going in that direction.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say too long on this, but I just want to ask you something, Tasha, and I'm curious about this. I mean, you love delivering the 3-day and you love doing the CTP. What is it that draws you so much more strongly towards wanting to do the CTP all the time? I mean, you're the queen of it now. And there's a lovely comment here from Kristin. She's put up, Tash, you're a master of training, the certified trainer program. I'm in awe of your expertise and I miss you. That's from Kristin Newton.
Oh, well, that's why people like Kristin. Yeah, that's, I've really thought about this such a lot, because, I've never made any secret of it, and that it's something I'm so passionate. I love the PLP. CTP wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the PLP. They're intertwined. Absolutely they are. But I think what I particularly enjoy about CTP is I feel like I've found something I'm good at. I love it. It's part of my life. It's how I live my life, in terms of belief and about the material and the messages that we're teaching. But you've got 10 days in the seeing people shine and grow and develop and confidence, and the realization that you don't have to conform to be like the way I deliver it, or the way the person next to me delivers it, or the way you deliver it, Penny. it's not that. It's how are you going to deliver it in your unique way to the best of your ability that's going to have the same impact on, you know, who you're delivering it to. And that is magic, because you're not trying to make somebody something they are not. You're celebrating what is different about them and giving them the power to step into what they are so brilliant at. That doesn't mean to say, I mean, there's consistency out the way we deliver it. There needs to be, but the way you are as a person, you're not asking people to be something they're not. You're asking them to be the best of what they're capable of. And you see that growth. Oh, there's nothing like it. I described it a couple of months ago. Somebody asked me, how do I feel? I went to a day 3 observation. And it was with Lindsay. I went to a day 3 observation, and at lunchtime somebody had asked me about, you know, how do you think she's doing? And I said, well, how do you think she's doing, of course? And that person gave me really great feedback, and I said, that's exactly how I feel. In fact, the best thing that I can experience when I'm observing a pilot is I don't need to be here. They don't need me. I'm there for support, and I'm there to, you know, obviously not step in, but be there for that person. But if I don't need to be there, that says everything about their own capability. It is like watching your child take their first steps. It's, you know, letting go and going, you're brilliant. Look at you. And yes, I guess there's an ego thing there, but there's nothing quite like it.
Oh, I think it sounds, Tash, honest to God, it's no wonder everybody goes through the CTP is utterly in love with you. You'll read this afterwards. There's so many comments coming up about people saying how amazing you are. And I second it 100%. Now, I just want to talk about one other thing, although it's along the same lines. You're currently observing and are very much part of us launching something that, as you know, has always, always, always been in my vision. And that's young people. So you're observing the Future Leaders Program, day 3 on Tuesday. This is a really different opportunity. And I know that you've certainly already identified one. How young do you think we could take young people through the CTP to help them become trainers, where they could then teach young people as well? I mean, there's no way I'd now go and deliver. Well, you know, I stand back from delivering. I think I've done my stint in life. But there's no way I'd go and deliver to young people. They'd think, what's this old grandma delivering, and how does she understand where we're coming from, or something like that? Anyway, but how young do you think we could think about taking people through the certified training program?
I'm going to be a bit of a pain in the neck in my answer a little bit, because it so would depend on their level of maturity. So you could have an 18-year-old who is, well, shit hot and really gets it and is passionate, and I would absolutely advocate for them doing it. And you might have a 24-year-old who gets it and is passionate about it, but for other reasons wouldn't be the right person to take through CTP. So I don't know that it's so much about age, but passion. So, you know, I think there's somebody in the group who's just come through, there were at least one for me who's stand out, who I would absolutely love them to come through. And I'm not sure how old that person is, in their early 20s.
19.
Oh, 19. Well, there you go. So, and I know that person would be fantastic. I just feel it in my bones. So I don't want to put a limit, or I don't want to put a limit on the age. I think it is about the individual and their level of maturity on it. I think we need, and I know we talk about this, we need young people coming through the CTP. When you're training, when you're delivering leadership material, I think there's an assumption that you need to be a certain age or demographic to deliver it with any kind of credibility. And I think that's something I fought with a lot when I used to deliver PLP before doing CTP. You know, when I was in my early 30s, for example. But actually, I think we can dispel some of that and start to work on getting some younger people coming through, not just to deliver to the Future Leaders program, but to be delivering the PLP. We've got so much to learn from every generation. And I think that's something we're seeing and celebrating more and more.
Yeah, I have to say that I think the Future Leaders program is probably one of the things that Emma's and I, as you know, are incredibly excited about. If you could take that Future Leaders program wherever you like, where would you take it, Tash?
Oh, I mean, to every school.
Yeah.
I'd love to, and there's loads of offshoots of it, aren't there? There's young people who've not had positive life experience. So I'm thinking of children who've come through the care system, young adults who are coming out of the care system. If it was part of the curriculum at school, that would be amazing. If it was part of, further education curriculum, that would be incredible. Anywhere that you could, honestly. But of course, there's a huge challenge with getting into state schools, for example. So I don't, we've talked about, haven't we, the age range of the Future Leaders program, and I think we've also had really positive experience of delivering it to a sixth form class. Do you remember years ago?
Yeah.
And the feedback was incredible, but that was a very unique and maverick headmaster who recognised the opportunity and allowed us to do that. And the feedback was fantastic. So I would go wherever young people have got the energy to kind of experience something quite different to what they've done so far, wherever you could. That would be fantastic.
It's really interesting because the person that we're talking about, the 19-year-old, I've had some ongoing conversations with him. And part of his feeling, he feels that the education system in many ways is broken. And I agree with him. I think it is. And he started off by saying, how would you get young people to hear, and all sorts of things like that. And he's now almost of the opinion that where we need to be putting our attention is on the teachers of primary school kids.
Yeah.
That if we could get all the teachers to believe and begin to understand leadership at a different level, and they're therefore teaching and bringing them on in a different way, because let's be honest, and they do it for the best reason in the world. I'd never say this negatively, but I think all of us are taught to focus on what children aren't doing well, thinking if we can give them advice how to do it better, then that's going to be what we need to do. And of course, on both of those counts, focusing on what they're doing badly, and secondly, giving advice, goes against everything that we're endeavouring to teach. And so he's thinking, where I would like to put my attention is I'd like all the teachers of primary school to go through it. And we did experience that, if you remember, years ago. There was a head teacher who came through, and then she put all her teachers through the programme, and they were just going into special measures, and within 18 months they were winning awards.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about that, Tash?
I mean, because it's that holistic approach, isn't it? Because I think one of the challenges that we had when we did this at Garth was, what about the parents? So if the children, the teachers, there were quite a few of the teachers who came through, we know the impact was phenomenal. That obviously helped when we delivered to the sixth form. But then what if they're going into a home environment or an environment outside of school that doesn't support it and actually counters it? And are we equipping those young people with the skills to be able to manage that? So I think you've got this, where wouldn't the world be a wonderful place if we all had some experience of it? But yes, starting with the teachers before the children makes so much sense, because they can support each other. But that would sound like an obvious starting point. So, and I think because it does challenge some of the traditional methods of teaching, I think you need that onboarding of that community to be able to support it properly. Because it is going to be challenging as conceptually for it to be so different to the approach that traditionally is taken as a teacher.
I know, it's funny. I often, as you know, I share this with a lot of people, and I joined a virtual program today with a group from John Lewis, just towards the end, and I joined them for the second time. And I said, it's so easy to go along thinking, you know, if you think how much bad news there is in the world and all of this stuff, it's tempting to sit there and maybe discuss it at dinner parties, talk about it, think about it, but just say, well, I can't do anything about that. It's much too big. And I paint the picture and say, yeah, but think about it one moment. Think of the size of an ocean liner and how big is the rudder by comparison, and the rudder turns it. You can choose to be the ocean liner, or you can choose to be the rudder.
Yeah.
You may be small, you may be only one person, but who says you can't make a difference?
Yeah.
And I believe each and every person who goes through this can make a difference, can make an unbelievable difference.
Yeah.
You know, and I really do. And I do hope that, in fact, I am going to ask you to say what is the most important thing that you could share with people that could inspire them to want to do the certified training program, not because they necessarily want to deliver training, but they want to become the sort of leader that is a living, breathing example, where it's gone from head to heart, not just, wow, this is amazing and interesting, but I want to be able to live it and breathe it and become, if you like, the rudder. It's just so interesting when you think about it, Tash. This is what I still can't believe about this program. Let's be honest, all it is downright common sense.
And how often do we say that? And we say it's, but it's not common practice. But you know, we get so wrapped up and this is a glib statement, really, but we overcomplicate something that's probably much more simple than we're giving it credit for. And there's so much beauty in that simplicity because it's then so accessible to all of us. And it breaks down some of those barriers about, am I somebody of influence? Am I a leader? Well, if we all are, then it's just about how effective we are, or how good we are at it, or how confident we are at it. If we're all a leader, then why aren't we just, let's accept that if we are able to influence somebody, and then we, by definition, then we're leading, then why not hone our skills on that, regardless of seniority, age, any of those other constrictions? We wrap it up in so much complexity and forget that actually it's so simple. Yeah. Mostly not easy.
No, I know.
Not easy.
I know. If it was easy, you and I would be perfect and not making as many mistakes as we still do,
and we'd be out of a job. So, you know, let's keep a little bit of the complexity now. But it's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, for me, CTP is like the treasure trove. You really unlock something unique in yourself. So for me, and what I see in others when they do CTP, is an acceptance of self. You know, we talk about things like imposter syndrome and, you know, lacking of confidence and limiting beliefs and all of those things. It taps into that real deep inner core of ourselves. And you and I experienced an acceptance of self, flaws and all, and an ability to work on them in a different way and look at yourself in a different way, without the fear, and actually much more about acceptance and the opportunity. And a real kind of understanding of responsibility. I mean, we use that word such a lot. What it really means to me is absolutely being responsible for every interaction that I have. It affects every relationship that I have. It's so core to who I am as a person. Being responsible, taking responsibility for my own behavior, understanding the impact that you have, and if your words and your actions aren't aligned, you know, how confusing and incongruent that can be for people. And all, you know, it's and but the core of it is simple. Who is the person I want to be? What's my legacy? How am I impacting other people? Not just at work, of course. I know we do talk about work. We have focused a lot on work, but actually not just as a human being outside of work, as a parent, as a partner, as a friend, you know, every relationship it affects.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And I got asked some really, when I was over in Australia last week, they asked me they did ask me some really interesting questions. And they asked me, I think it was to say 3 words that would have described myself before I did the program, and 3 words that would describe myself now. Could you do that?
Oh, that's a tough one. Before PLP or before CTP? Because there'd be different words,
Before
I think.
PLP.
Before PLP, yeah. So 3 words before PLP. Lacking in confidence. That's not that, but not confident.
Unconfident.
Unconfident. Yeah. Scared and naive. And probably and after.
Or today.
Well, today.
Yeah.
Confident, accepting, and fair. Yeah, that's a tough question.
I know it was.
Oh yeah, I want to reflect on that, but I think that's a brilliant question. That's a great question for us to start asking delegates before they do the PLP.
Honestly, I have to say, some of the questions they came up with, I thought, whoa.
Yeah.
I was really having to think about some of the answers. But I definitely would describe myself now as much more calmer, more accepting, and probably kinder or more loving.
Yeah.
More giving, probably.
Yeah.
But it was wow. Yeah. It was really interesting to be asked that.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really interesting question. Yeah, it is. Well, the funny thing is, and I know I think you've said this publicly, you've never done the PLP as a delegate.
No.
And you've never done this, and you've never done CTP.
No.
So, we're sort of, which is why I think people so look up to you, is that it feels so much your program. And whilst they are simple, conceptually simple things, simple messages, about taking responsibility, about choice and communication, all of those things are intellectually interesting, but simple. It feels so much your program because it's the way you've knitted it all together is so clever. And I know you're quite sort of disparaging of yourself at times about it. I don't know how I did it. It just came together. But there's some magic in it that feels so part of who you are. And I think that's an important thing that I think we all carry through, even no matter if the person who's doing CTP won't necessarily have met you. And know you at any depth, but they're so respectful of you and your part in the program. It's really, and that's a joy for me to see, somebody who loves you so much, to see that respect borne out by other people who are delivering this material. I think that's really special too.
Yeah, I do feel so incredibly lucky. And as trainers, you are all amazing. Anyway, Tash, time is nearly up. I would like to say to everybody who's here and listening or watches it later, if through hearing Tash, you've been inspired to say, actually, I'd like to find out more about whether it's worth going the next step and forget thinking about it as the certified training program, because that is an implication. You have to want to be becoming a trainer to do it. Think of it as a masterclass in leadership. Think of it as that, and think, would I really like to find out a bit more to see if I think it could help me on the journey? And if so, please, is that okay if they contact you direct, Tash?
Of course it is. Of course it is.
So I can never remember, you're just Tasha at thelivingleader.com, or are you Natasha? I never know.
No, only to my mum when I've been bad, my Natasha. So Tasha at thelivingleader.com. Yeah, very happy to talk to anybody.
So if anybody's curious, just email Tash and then either arrange a Zoom or whatever to find out more. But maybe just think of it as a masterclass in leadership. So if you think it's worth becoming that individual who'll become a living, breathing example of it, believe me, if you've taken this much from the 3-day program, you will take this much from the certified training program, and it will take it from the only way to describe it, Tash, isn't it? It's from head to heart.
Yeah,
Because
it is.
it's at a different level.
Yeah.
So I'd like to wind up by, first of all, Tash, thank you. Thank you for joining me. I told you we'd wing it and we wouldn't have a problem, would we?
I don't know where the hour's gone.
I know, but also I want to say, Tash, my life is richer for having you in it. You have been a friend, a support, somebody who's there for me when we've been going through shit, or I've been going through shit. And you have been there with me every step of the way. You have grown beyond belief. You are an inspiration to everybody who works with you on the certified training program. Couldn't do it without you. And you are an integral part of the Living Leader, but most importantly, you are an integral part of my life. And I thank you for being in it. My life truly is the richer for having you in it.
Oh, thanks you.
Tash.
I love you. Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Lovely to see you all. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, guys.